Hello and welcome to Political Arena, a program designed to discuss anything and everything about politics and those who play it, as well as the people who are watching them play it the way they should or should not. My name is Mono Balagbobo, and today on the program we'll discuss highlights of some trending political stories in the country and as well focus on Kogi Governorship race. I will be introducing my guests after this short break, so do stay with us.
As suggested in the motion.
From 31st January to June 31st, 2023, say aye. Aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it.
Do you know what it takes to lead? Do you understand what is politics? Do you have issues concerning the way we play politics? Do you have reservations about some political mugu? Do you want to serve or be served? Do you want to contest? Do you want to occupy any political office or be in charge of your world? All this and many more are what we discuss right here in the Political Arena. A program where we trash and arrange, condemn and commend, celebrate and blame all that play out in politics. Do not be told. Join me, Mono Balagbobo, every Saturday by 7 p.m. to throw more light on why we play politics the way we do and how we can play it better. Political Arena, building a government of the people and for the people. Don't miss it. All right, welcome back from the break. Today we'll start by reviewing the supplementary elections of last week. Irregularities defined the last general elections, which led to cancellations of some elections in about 24 states in the country, which were deemed to be inconclusive by INEC. INEC took the decision to conduct supplementary elections in over 2,660 polling units, 93 legislative constituencies, and 185 local governments where elections had been declared inconclusive. The supplementary elections, which held last week, was met with mixed reactions as reports of vote buying and violence were reported in Kano, Katsina, Rivers, Anambra, Kebbi, and more, even voter apathy in places like Sokoto. We'll look into this shortly with my guests. And of course, still on the supplementary elections, the issue in Adamawa governorship election. And of course, in Adamawa State, a certain Hudu Yunusa Aru, an adult male and resident electoral commissioner of Adamawa State, engaged in disrupting the collation of the results of the supplementary gubernatorial election in Adamawa State. And of course, it will be recalled that INEC had declared the gubernatorial election in Adamawa State March 18, 2023 inconclusive due to issues in Fufure local government, and the number of cancelled votes exceeded the margin of lead between the People's Democratic Party candidate and incumbent Governor Ahmadu Fintiri and the closest challenger Aishatu Dahiru of the All Progressive Congress. As a result of 10 of the affected local government was announced. Fintiri, the PDP candidate leading with a wide margin, eventually won re-election into the state. All right, with me on set to discuss all of this and more, of course, happening in the world of politics is Mr. Mike Abu, the CEO of the NIGERIANPOST. So glad to have you on the program.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. ABDULKADIR bin ABDULMALIK, a political analyst. Good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
All right, we've seen how it has played, talking about the supplementary elections in the country. And of course, just from the brief introduction, we saw, some irregularities. And, one would think INEC probably must have learned its lessons. And, stakeholders also across the party would have been able to up their game to ensure that, we didn't have such an embarrassing situation as we saw in Adamawa State. So I'll start with you. What are your thoughts quickly on the general, on the supplementary elections across the country in some states that were affected?
Once again, thank you for having me on this program. And I want to say that Just like you have observed, the supplementary elections were held across states where they needed to have conclusive elections, and one would have expected that following the failure of INEC in the presidential, National Assembly, governorship and state assembly election, a lot of lessons would have been learned. But looking at the just concluded supplementary election, you also come to discover that lessons were actually not learned on the part of INEC, on the part of security agencies, and then, of course, the politicians, having also understood from the fallout of the previous elections that there was a need to be forceful, there was a need to be desperate. We saw desperation on the part of all the politicians who wanted to make it a do-or-die affair. So in most of the constituencies and even the governorship elections that were concluded, you will see an outcry of politicians, oppositions, political parties, who felt that INEC didn't do enough. Either level playing field were not created. We saw like the Adamawa scenario where, very unfortunate, the resident electoral commissioner, knowing fully well that the functions of announcing the results were those of the returning officer, went haywire, having asked for the postponement of the collation of results to resume by 11 a.m. on Sunday. We saw how by 9 a.m. he had gone ahead, even without result, to announce a winner in that election, not even apportioning scores to the winners of that election. And you saw it made a mockery of our democracy, and also went ahead to tell you that the complaint people had in the previous elections were not far-fetched. It was just that the case of Adamawa, because it was a one-off election, all the attention of the world was focused on it.
So assuming it was across,
Assuming
it was a full-blown
yesterday, and I told him that if this scenario had played out in the general elections where
I think we probably wouldn't even have
nobody would have known
realized
all of these things, and they would have covered up. But it's unfortunate, like I tell you, INEC had faults to be blamed. The politicians were also desperate, and it's unfortunate that we tried to make a mockery of our democracy. Several years after having unbroken democracy in this country, we had thought that by now elections would have been seamless, but I think that it is still a work in progress. Moving forward, the lessons that have been learned in 2023 will be put forward, looked into, so that we can come up with something better even in the future.
We can only hope so. Mr. ABDULKADIR, your reactions quickly on the supplementary elections.
Well, I want to align myself with what my colleague has said here as regards the outcome of the election and the outcry by the Nigerians. Of course, what has played out is what I describe as a fascism, because it sent a message that even at the center, people are trying to display the monopoly of declaring result without the consent of the INEC chairman. Because we read on the news where the INEC chairman was trying to make emphasis on the fact that he never asked the returning officer to make the pronouncement. But then the question is, what led to that situation? What drives the intention? What is the intention about? Is it that he has been induced monetarily, or is it that the democracy is at stake? Because from our view, you come to understand that what Professor Mr. Yakubu Hudu has displayed is what in the same climb will not has happened, because ordinarily you don't declare law without collating figures together. But he went ahead and pronounced law without even apportioning the scores. Of course, this is just a signal that what we have been trying to avoid in the time past is still occurring. And I hope that what we have learned in this present situation is that going forward, the INEC chairman should try as much as possible to ensure that we have those people of proven characters, people with integrity, to handle election materials and election issues like this. As if this thing persists, it set a signal and could lead to another war within the political parties, and that will not go down well with the system. So I think there's need for us to actually address these issues, and there's need for the government of the day to ensure that issues like this does not occur again.
You know, we keep hammering on the issue of integrity, and it's really very important because, you know, I mean, we heard of the allegations of over 2 billion bribe, 2 billion naira bribe, although, Binani was able to debunk all of that. But I mean, when you hear stuff like that, I mean, how do you feel? Because when we talk about integrity, I mean, we know Nigerians love money. I mean, 2 billion is allegedly is an amount, that you just can't imagine, and someone just puts that on your table. I mean, that can turn someone of integrity, to become overnight a corrupt person. And it's really, really terrible. So, in essence, I think the biggest takeaway from this, from the elections generally so far in Nigeria is, how do you think the nation will move forward in terms of looking at, the next general elections, how, not just the government, but also INEC as an independent body will be able, to independently, properly monitor without allowing anything going under, in the guise of, we are covering so many places at the same time. What do you think should be done?
Yes, you will recall that at a point in time when the president had released the name of most of the resident electoral commissioners and some returning officers, as journalists we had raised outcry on the integrity of some of these persons who had been so nominated, because some of them, you will discover that from their antecedents, they were people of questionable characters. From those that we knew that had their names there were a lot of signals that these people were not going to be the unbiased empire that we have so desired. But even after the outcry, nothing much was done. So for us to be able to have credible election, the need for us to begin to have a process in which those that will man the affairs of the electoral processes should be actually outlined. If you recall the Adamawa case, the returning officer had the responsibility by the section provided in the Electoral Act to be the sole person who should announce the result. But for the rec to have done what he has done, just like you did say, possibly because of inducement, it tells the kind of society we live in, that the commissioner of police was seated beside him, the director of state security service was seated beside him, all the people that you ordinarily would have thought know the law. The rec is a professor, so he's not an illiterate, meaning that he's not ignorant of the law. 2 billion naira, though alleged, even though the other party has come to deny it, is enough to make any person mad. Two things are at stake. It is either you are under the influence of some psychopathic drugs, or better still, money itself. When you get too much money that you do not deserve, is enough also to make you go mad. That was the scenario that played out in Adamawa State. So until we begin to have a process that brings in persons, we are aware that even in the 2023 election, there were some returning officers that came under pressure. There was a lady who, even at gunpoint, so much money as returning officer was made available to her. She said, no, I have a name to protect. Until Nigerians begin to know that they have names to protect, and then until the agencies that are responsible, as we speak, Hudu is still walking about the street. Unfortunately, he is an appointee of Mr. President. INEC couldn't have suspended him. INEC couldn't have sacked him. What they did was ask to at least step away. And even as we speak, the Inspector General of Police is still saying he's waiting for a formal report to get to him before he can make any arrest. So we must have strong institutions. Until we have institutions that are strong, like INEC, like the security agencies, and then people who, if caught in the act, will face prosecution, and then it will serve as deterrent to others. It will continue on and on, and it's not good for our democracy.
Okay, Mr. ABDULKADIR, we talk about the Independent National Electoral Commission. Truth is, how independent is INEC? Because based on the past elections we've had, I mean, is it not high time, the INEC begins to partner with vetted international organizations who can be fully, involved in this process? I know for some people they might cry out foul, no. Foreign people are trying to interfere in our elections and all that. But given, Nigeria is a very unique country. When you say something is independent, I mean, come on, whoever is there still in some way can be loyal to whoever puts him there. So is it not high time, to curb some of these exigencies that INEC begins to partner with vetted international bodies who can probably be able to not only protect, the people who are in charge, to ensure that these elections are properly conducted, but can also be able to partner with them, you understand, so that there is like that backing, so that fear, you understand, that will make people want to cower, to threats, and to intimidations.
Yes, of course, by way of the acronym INEC, we stand for Independent National Electoral Commission. One will have to go back to the memory lane where we have the Electoral Commission, FEDECO, first, before it now transmogrified to what we have today as INEC. Of course, Nigeria is setting today. We all know that most of the words we use or the statement that we use, they are not the actual representation of what it is. Just like we've been clamoring for independence of judiciary and all of that. But then when you look at INEC as a body, of course, it is a body that is responsible for their day-to-day activities. Of course, they pay their staff and all of that. But then the decision lies within the system again. I still refer all these things lies on the fact that the system of today, the government of today, are not willing to actually address this issue. This issue are not issues that should be lingering out to this moment. Why? Because when you have weak institutional mechanism, it tends to reawaken issues like this. Else, of course, we borrow from Western ideologies where we see people, where we see the developed nations, they conduct the election too, and of course they are not their result. And even for the fact that we have some section of grievances coming from either Democrat or Republican, of course, there's no way you conduct the election and people perceive to be free and fair. One party, one other party must, of course, be not satisfied with it. But when you look at the Nigeria setting, I think what we should be talking about is not about the independency of the Electoral Commission. We should be talking about the mechanism that will be put in place to ensure that these issues are not recurring. For instance, myself, when I was going through some newspaper headline, and I felt like, yes, for you to curb issues of election, I think you have to have a strong electoral mechanism where voter registrations, where ballot papers, ballot boxes, and vote cast will just drop in. And of course, it will send signal to the headquarters. But when you are using beavers to a very large extent, of course, for me, it's just overrated. It's overrated because when
the major issue for Nigerians now was the functionality of the IRF portal, which was supposed to be like the whole game changer.
That's what we are looking at. That's why I said when you have a weak institution, it tends to reawaken issues that are not necessary. Because when we look at the INEC of a thing, of course, when Professor Yakub came on board, he's trying to modify the system, trying to bring up ideas that will strengthen democracy in the country. But then we found out that what he has just done is not it's not something that will strengthen democracy in the country. Because for me, trying to overrule a smart candidate for beavers is just overrated. I would suggest that what the government will have to do is just to ensure that, of course, we have an institution where there should be check and balances, where there should be election monitoring team that will look at issues like this before the pronouncement. We should not rely on the REC and the returning officers, because most of these guys, they don't have integrity. And of course, we all know how appointment is being done in the country. It's based on proven integrity. It is based on who you know. And so,
if I may just
add
to what he has said, when you talk about trying to reform the system, right from the advent of the nation's democracy, we have seen a lot of reformation. At every dispensation, you see reforms in the electoral system, trying to bring sanity into the electoral system. But you now discover that it's not about the reform, it's about the people. Nigerians are a people. This same democracy is what is being practiced in other climes. In fact, some of the processes we put in place as check and balances, in some other climes, they do not have all of this, but yet they are able to come out with results that are credible and acceptable to the people. Goodluck Jonathan as president, conducted an election that he lost, and you can see Nigerians were happy. He didn't challenge the process because everybody felt to some extent the right things were done. But after that particular episode, we had a situation where the sit-tight intentions of our leaders are always at every level and every point wanting to usurp the process. So it is not about what you put in place. It is about Nigerians trying to subjugate the processes. And until we have a reform of the mind, we might continue to change the rules, and yet people find a way. INEC told us that IRF was going to work. They told us what beavers would do, that they were going to upload results real time. But you can, as I speak to you today, this is 73 days after the presidential election. INEC has not been able to display for us, even on the IRF portal, the actual result of that election. And yet so much money, taxpayers' money, were spent in trying to reform this system. So we must first and foremost begin to think of how we will reform our mind. Let us have a system that works. We must all agree. The institutions are there, but they must be strengthened in such a way that each one of them can operate independently without somebody having political will.
But don't you think as long as government continues to do the appointing, how would you say INEC is independent? Because as long as someone in government appoints somebody to be the chairman of INEC, how is that independence?
In other climes, it is always an appointment that is done maybe by the government. But of course, people who are appointed, who are so appointed, are people who have credibility, who have integrity, and then you go through the National Assembly, and then the National Assembly tries to do the cleaning and to ensure that this person who are so nominated are qualified. You will recall that there was a time Nigerians had to shout when a member of the APC, a lady, was appointed as INEC commissioner. It took the president so much of effort before he could drop her. But later on, we discovered that some other persons, like the Sokoto State Rec, was a member of the APC.
And that is wrong.
And that is wrong. And he came on board, and you can see the outcry in the Sokoto State election. So, for me, we as the Nigerians, we try to do things the right way, in the open. But in the secret, you know that the political will and the sincerity is not always there. We must begin to have a system of government where the pecuniary intentions of being there to enrich yourself, winner takes it all, is a little bit disabused. You can't imagine that today you become a councillor, your life changes. You become a council chairman, your life changes. So the desperation to want to get there. And then you look at the professors who are the returning officers and whatever.
That is even another issue.
For a very long time, they came back, their salaries have not been paid, and then somebody come to induce them.
Why would they not
take
it up?
for them to circumvent the process. And even when there is outcry and they are caught, the judiciary, the security agencies do not do the arrest and prosecution, and so the man walks the street, get chieftaincy title, so it allows others to do the same thing when opportunity happens.
And just to wrap it up on this segment, still on the whole INEC issue of a thing, we have a commission that is INEC. People within that commission should be able to grow and then, from the ranks to become INEC commissioner. Because very soon now our president-elect, Tinubu, I'm sure when he comes into power, once his fourth tenure is almost up, he's going to bring in another person to come take up that position. Is that not something to be checked as a whole, Mr. ABDULKADIR?
Of course, one will expect that as the president-elect, and by the grace of God, he will be sworn on the 29th of May, we expect that as a technocrat that he is, he will be able to appoint somebody that has a proven integrity and somebody that will be able to sustain our democracy. But of course, personally, I think there should be a benchmark.
Exactly.
There should be a benchmark.
Because whoever is even coming in would still have to learn. Meanwhile, people in that commission have probably been there for like years. And one would expect, I don't know, I can be wrong, that these people would be able to, understand the mistakes of the past and begin to improve. But the whole appointment of a thing, I don't know, for me, it just questions.
Like what my senior boss has said here, we need mental evolution. It is not about you trying to see, even if you check, if you have the processes on board, if the person is not willing to execute the tax, then what do you expect? I think the mental revolution is what Nigeria needs.
Just to bring it to an end, is a mental revolution possible at this time?
It is possible. We have seen Nigerians who are standing up for change. We have seen several Nigerians with integrity. Just like I told you, a returning officer in one of the southeastern states came under pressure. Monies were promised her, but she said no. the
So,
true
I mean,
reflection of the
someone who
people.
has shown that kind of disposition
Yes.
should definitely rise.
So there are a whole lot of people who are in the society that I can tell you that will live above board. But until we begin to have those set of people in place, we might not get it right. I am one of the advocates who think that yes, INEC should have people work. This idea of bringing in ad hoc staff who see it as every 4 years you make money as returning officer, as electoral officers posted to local government. Today, many of them are in the street driving the new cars they have bought and all of that. I think that we should have a system where people should remain in the system, learn over time. And then when there is an institution that is able to arrest and prosecute, and then when you have found one thing, you are put behind bar, punishment is meted to you.
Others can
it
learn.
will serve as a deterrent. We have been told of several electoral offenders in the 2023 election, but I can tell you that I have not had any one person being prosecuted. So it's not good for our democracy.
Such a shame. All right, we'll go on a short break. We'll be right back. Please to stay with us.
As suggested in the motion.
From 31st January to June 31st, 2023, say aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it.
Do you know what it takes to lead? Do you understand what is politics? Do you have issues concerning the way we play politics? Do you have reservations about some political mugu? Do you want to serve or be served? Do you want to contest? Do you want to occupy any political office or be in charge of your world? All this and many more are what we discuss right here in the political arena. A program where we trash and arrange, condemn and commend, celebrate and blame all that play out in politics. Do not be told. Join me, Warner Balagogo, every Saturday by 7 p.m. to throw more light on why we play politics the way we do and how we can play it better. Political Arena, building a government of the people and for the people. Don't miss it. All right, welcome back from the break. And next today, we are looking at all the latest developments in Kogi politics. First, here is a roundup of candidates who have won their party primaries so far. APC, former Auditor General for Local Government in Kogi State, Ahmed Usman Ododo. PDP, Senator Dino Melaye. AA Party, Mr. Olayinka Bremo. And of course, that's for the Action Alliance Party. The LNPP candidate, Musa Mubarak, for New Nigeria People's Party. Of course, then we move to ADC. A bit controversial, I must say. Two factions have produced different candidates for the November 11th governorship election in the state. And the member representing Yagba Federal Constituency, Honorable Leke Abejide, and Dele Williams. So I don't know, I'll leave it open for my guests to help us break all of that drama down. So quickly, what's going on? Let's start with ADC before we come to the drama in, of course, APC and in PDP.
Okay, it's good that you call it a drama, and that's why we tell you that the desperation of the Nigerian politicians is not about the process. You are just looking at ADC, but I'm aware that even in the Labour Party, they have two flag bearers. In NNPP, you mentioned Mubarak, but let me tell you that they have one of the primaries was conducted in Abuja in one of the hotel rooms, and it happened that that person was the one who had the original results. The one that was conducted in Lokoja here, they only had photocopy of the results, so they will need to get to the court to be able to strengthen out the issues. You talk about ADC, yes, they have also two candidates, and you have, even in the SDP, you also have two governorship candidates. So on and on, if you look at it, these are signals to the fact that if you look at Nigeria in general and you talk about the political drama in our electoral process, if you come down home, you also discover that it of course, is a smaller Nigeria. So far, so good. The candidates have emerged. The signals there are pointing to the fact that we have the APC having a candidate in Usman Ododo from the central. We have Dino Melaye from the east. So from the outcome of the primaries, you will discover that the APC and the PDP seems to have primaries that held everyone spellbound. The APC had Usman Ododo, Dino Melaye emerged, and those ones I can say, because the two major parties were the talk of the town, we can say that those ones went through without all of these hitches. But for the Labour Party, I am aware that one held in the Army Barracks, one held at Kepa's Multipurpose Hall. In NMPP, one held at Amusement Park, then elsewhere in Abuja, there was one other one. In other political parties, you also have those scenarios that played out. So it's going to be, our movement now is to the judiciary. They will need to interpret who amongst these persons between Lekki and Dele Williams is the ADC.
That will be at the state level.
At the state level, of course. So once we are done with those ones, then we can now begin to look at the outcome of the general election. But as we speak now, the major political parties, PDP, APC, seems to go back to the drawing board, begin to prepare, see how they can wrestle party. You can imagine the good showing of the Labour Party in the 2023 general election, the presidential election. One had thought that such a party will leverage on that popularity, come to Kogi State, see what they can do. But you'll be disappointed that they also had two candidates for governorship. So that is another issue that they will need to contend with. As we speak, we have in the central, the only candidate that we can say for now, because there are room for substitutions. In the next couple of days, parties will begin to do substitutions. Some persons may step down. Some of these people that emerge may be placeholders. There is a law that allows that you can substitute. So once those substitutions are done, in the central, we can rightly say it's only Usman Ododo. In the west, we have Dino Melaye, we have Dele Williams, we have Lekki ABDULMALIK, who will be struggling, who actually will get the major vote from the west. And then all of these people that we talk about did parallel congresses, and those parties that had two candidates, all of them are to the east. That makes it very unfortunate. So one would have thought that the east would have come with one candidate, see how they can leverage on their population. But as it is now,
they are spread out.
Say they are spread out
Across the parties.
And for you to be able to win this election, you must meet some constitutional provision. You must have to third requirement in the 21 local government. And except for the PDP and APC that has this structure, these other ones, no matter how they try, if they are not able to put their act together, it will be very difficult to be able to meet those requirements, get majority vote, and even upturn the stage in Kogi State governorship election come November 11.
Now, ABDULKADIR, let's start with some of these small parties per se. What a way to kickstart, the whole game plan it is that they have. But wouldn't you call this shooting yourself before you jump?
Of course, you see, when you are trying to develop a party, when you are coming on board a party, it is expected that you made a wide consultation across board. You try to have a structure, then you make a public prayer. You sample opinion and see how far the expectation of the people. But then what we are seeing today is it's more or less like a child play, where you see two people claiming a specific result. For instance, the LP, the ADC, and of course, down to the NMPP. You have Asambiwa claiming the original result, and of course, Mubarak claiming the result too. But then, one would expect that, as defined by Hart last week, he said politics is all about who gets what, and how. And I think this is what is playing out at the moment, where you see people trying to claim the result of the election, but then wait for the INEC to submit names of those that owns the original result. But then, before then, I don't think there's any point for us to raise an eyebrow until the party decide and INEC make a conclusion of who is the original owner of the result that has been displayed on social media and across platforms.
All right, now let's come to the major political parties. Just like you were here with us on the program last week, we foresaw defections in some of these parties. Let's start with the PDP. Of course, there's been reports, of breakouts here and there, some people moving from PDP to APC. And I mean, how does this, come to play? And, of course, the candidate representing PDP in the forthcoming election, was making media rounds and, trying to build, try to build something that would be solid for him and his party. Now, in the wake of all of these defections that have started, and some are definitely going to still happen, how do you think he will be able to survive this race?
All eyes are on the People's Democratic Party. You recall that they have been in government in Kogi State for about 16 years, and they lost in 2015 under Captain Idris Wada, and since then they have gone into political oblivion. One was thinking that they were going to use the 2023 election to come back, but as we speak, they only have one House of Assembly seat. They also have just one House of Representative seat. But I can also tell you that it was not out of place. If they put their act together, come out with an acceptable candidate, they could have also done better in the governorship. But as things start presently, before the primaries, there were a lot of complaints. All the aspirants in the PDP had alleged how the delegate list were being done into favor of a particular aspirant by the headquarters of the PDP. And we saw it played out in the primaries. Of course, Senator Dino Melaye won. And after that, I think there has been a lot of disenchantment in the party. Quite a number of people, except a true reconciliation is done. Some may actually go for reconciliation but still remain within the party from the failures we have gathered to still work against the party, because for many of them, they think it is a paper time for Dino Melaye. But as we speak, the PDP is not looking too good.
Even with, I mean, he recently visited the past two governors.
He visited past
who are
two
from the
governors
east.
Who are from the east. But I must begin to tell you that
will they be able to give him the support that he's looking for?
These two governorship candidates came with two different candidates in the primaries. Captain Idris Wada came with Doko Luna from Ida. He finished second. Former Governor Ibrahim Idris came with Kabir Usman, the barrister. He pulled 121 votes or so, and he lost. They all lost in that election, meaning that they are beginning to lose relevance. I think their time seems to be up. The PDP in Kogi State need to do a lot of reform. There are a lot of people who need to give way. You need to start from the party leadership. The executive of the party needs to be reformed. You need to bring in people who can drive in the process, people who have confidence of members, who can also be in the field. In one of the 2022 elections, we didn't see the state chairman of the party in anywhere, even in a press statement, to condemn what members of the party had thought were electoral irregularities. And with what is happening now, even if Dino Melaye is visiting these two governors, former governors, trying to mend fences, maybe trying to curry their support, yes, all eyes are on the Kogi East Senatorial District to produce the deputy governor for either the APC and the PDP. Meaning that they are also going there for balkanization of the vote there. And don't forget that the SDP, the Labour Party and other ones, they also have a governorship candidate from the East. So as we speak, it's going to be a sort of partitioning of Kogi East Senatorial District. And then as things are unfolding, if the Central comes with a block vote, that will also be an issue for the PDP, because people will certainly be voting along ethnic line. People will vote along religious line. You can't take away these two important factors in our polity. Leke Abejide is from West. If he finally gets the ticket, he has Dino Melaye in also the West to contend with. But I can tell you from the 5 open local government in the West where they will be coming from, not much of a vote will be expected from there. The senator representing Kogi West was able to garner 30,000 votes from the 5 local government. He needed just 40,000 votes from Lokoja Kogi local government that made him have 70,000 to be able to. And this 70,000, if things work well in one local government in the Central Senatorial District, you could pick it out. And the PDP, as we speak now, depending on where they pick up their deputy governor, I'm aware that the APC is looking at somewhere around the Kina local government, where under the last election, in the governorship election, they came up with something that was as close to 100,000, which knocks off what comes from Kogi West. So that puts them in a very tight corner. People will need to do a lot of brain work in the course of the forthcoming election. But as we speak now, the APC still seems to have some edge in terms of structure. They are still in government. They have the funding. You can't rule away finance from
And the power of
election,
incumbency.
the power of incumbency. So, and that's why we are telling the opposition political parties they must actually go to the drawing board if they really want to win this election. Genuine reconciliation. Dino had to do that, and the ADC also had to do that. Except in Yaba Federal Constituency, Ijimukaba Federal Constituency, where they have 2 House of Rep seats, they do not also have presence in East. They do not have presence in the Central. It's not rocket science. I know that between now and November, so much can happen in politics. Every minute is important, but I'm not seeing anything that will be unusual.
All right, ABDULKADIR, now APC is not left behind. Of course, there's been a faction, I think, from Ijumu in arm of the party who are, saying that Senator Smart Adeyemi should be expelled from the party and, all of that. And he too also has been doing media rounds across some of the top major networks in the country. Now, what would you say about, of course, there are people who support Senator Smart Adeyemi. Are we seeing, a breakout that is likely to happen? Is he going to be expelled? What do you see?
Of course, when you look at the scenario that is happening now in Kogi West Senatorial District, as regards Senator Smart Adeyemi, yes, he went on the television station, channel TIVE and another station, television, to make pronouncement that there was no election in Kogi State. While his co-contestant Muri was claiming to have won the election, he's saying there is no election in Kogi State. Of course, and you have a group of persons from Yabawe trying to say that Smart Adeyemi should be expelled from the APC. Yes, what is playing out for me is just an event, just trying to create a scene.
Like a stage
because
play.
It's not possible for a group of persons to just come outside we don't know their nomenclature, we don't know where they are coming from, their party, and of course we don't know them by their words, trying to make pronouncement that the party should decide how a person should be expelled. I think if there should be a formal communication, it should be written to the state chairman, and the chairman will act on it. Not you coming to live television or going to a radio station or even on social media trying to make proclamation for the expulsion of.
So in other words, you're saying it's more of like an internal play to like maintain a narrative.
Yeah, probably they are trying to please the government of the day because they are APC member, and of course because he's not doing well in the Central District. Because the signal is that if as a senator you are doing well for people, we don't expect that a member of a political party will just come out and make such an announcement. But then it is what it is. It is a system, it is a politics, and of course we expect much of these things will come out in the next few days. And
all right, my last question for the both of you. Now, there's something at play that I think that most of these candidates are not really seeing, because we've all been speaking, from the ethnic side of things. What about people in the state, citizens in the state, who don't really care where you're from? How are these candidates going to appeal to such voters? And I want to think that the youths make up the majority of this sect of the electorate. Don't you think that we're missing something here? Because the youth vote is alive and well. And none of these parties so far, at least for now that I'm aware of, seem to have them in mind for now.
Well, you will recall that these candidates that emerged when they were aspirants, they had approached the people, particularly the youth group. I want to say that the APC, you can't take it away from them. Under Governor Yaya Bello has been an administration that has been youth inclusive. And so I'm thinking that Ahmed Ododo is also another young man who is also trying to promise the youth population that I will continue from where Governor Yaya Bello stops for in terms of appointment. Never in history in Kogi State have we had the presence of young people in governance. And I think it's already a signal telling the other youth that, look, we must continue with what is happening now. So it's left for the other parties like the PDP to see if there is any complaint the PDP has always had is they are not involving the youth in politics, in governance. And it also played out even in their recent primaries, because when you look at how the delegates were co-opted, who were organized, the same leaders, old leaders, were the ones who did same thing, same old way. And that was why in some cases you had a lot of complaint in the party. But we are hoping that without much ado, as the candidates emerge and the campaign starts, they must begin to speak to the youth, what they intend to do in the area of education, in the areas of job creation, because as we speak, we have issues of unemployment, underemployment in Kogi State. They must also talk about how they can engage the youth in agriculture, because agriculture for us is a mainstay in Kogi State. We have not really tapped into our potentials. I am thinking that these are what will drive the campaigns moving forward, and we are hoping that the youth will buy into what they are saying in all of the political parties and see how a candidate will emerge and see how they can offer good governance to the state.
All right, Mr. ABDULKADIR, your final thoughts on this?
Yes, let me align myself with my co-speaker has just said that the parties will have to look into youth inclusiveness into governance, because if you look at the system today, the APC, they've been able to co-opt a large number of the youth into the system, where you have a large number of SSA, SA, and of course local government chairman. They are young guys, they are doing well, of course. So the other parties should look at into these areas and see how they can bring on board young youth that will be of value addition to the society, and of course that will help the system grow.
All right, and that's the much we can take today on the program. And that's all we can take today on the political arena today. I want to thank once again my guests, Mr. Mike Abu from the Nigerian Post. Thank you so much, sir. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. ABDULKADIR bin ABDULMALIK, thank you, sir, for being with us today. And of course, you can be rest assured that on the political arena, we'll continue to keep ourselves abreast with all the latest happenings, of course, as we continue to look forward to the 11th of November. And of course, we know that definitely the narrative is going to change, and we'll be following it all and other top stories across the globe in the world of politics. Once again, thanks for joining us. My name is Mono Balagobu. God bless Nigeria.
Those against any, the ayes have it.